is a senior leader of research and social innovation for Skills Society, and her colleague Matt Ashdown is a senior manager of community supports at Skills Society. Matt, can you go and give everybody a little wave as well?
Hi everyone, it's fantastic to be here.
Wonderful. So Matt has been working both in the field of disability and housing for over 20 years. He holds a rehabilitation practitioner diploma and a Bachelor of Community Rehabilitation. Matt has over 10 years of frontline experience supporting people with developmental disabilities and is now in the role of senior manager of community supports at Skills Society. A little more information about Rebecca. Rebecca is the senior leader of research and social innovation at Skills Society. Rebecca completed her master's degree at the University of Alberta. Utilizing qualitative and participatory methods, her work explored the experiences of inclusion and belonging of children with disabilities. So welcome, Rebecca and Matt. You guys take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having us with you guys today. So we're here to talk a little bit about the Future of Home Inclusive Housing Solutions Lab that we've been embarking upon for about the last year and a half, maybe even a little bit more than that. So it's some exciting stuff. And so we're just gonna go through a little bit of a presentation and then we'll give you to talk about the work that we've done. And then from there, we'll be able to answer any questions and that type of stuff. So to start, I'd like to acknowledge that the work we will share today took place on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. Throughout the journey, we strove to be good examples of treaty relatives. So the Future of Home Lab was done through funds that were achieved through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation through the National Housing Strategy. Please don't mind my dog. I'm sorry, someone must be close to the door, of course. So we embarked on this and we partnered with Inclusion Alberta, Civida, which used to be Capital Region Housing. They were Capital Region Housing for the vast majority of the time we worked on them through this project, as well as Homeward Trust Edmonton, which is the Housing First service provider in Edmonton. They're the backbone organization of the entire Housing First program. And this was done at the Action Lab, which is one of the social enterprises at Skills. So as I mentioned, it's been an 18-month social innovation exploration aimed at generating housing and support models that are accessible, affordable, and support people's social inclusion. It's brought all kinds of people together, including people with disabilities, their families and allies, architects, developers, housing funders, support providers, and many more. And we put our heads together and tackled this complex challenge. At the heart of the project has been a really strong desire to find creative and new ways to support people's social inclusion. So we really came together to ask ourselves, what might an affordable, accessible housing and support model that also supports the social inclusion and belonging of people with disabilities look like? The key attributes that guided our work were in that diagram in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It was very important to us to explore home as inclusive, affordable, accessible, viable and sustainable, and supported by stakeholders. So why is there a challenge? So in 40 years, despite tireless efforts of advocates and allies, Skills has been around for about 40 years. Not many have figured out affordable, inclusive living models that are humanized, center individuals' wishes, and do this systematically. Our experience is that there's a lack of options today that really optimize accessibility, affordability, and authentic inclusion. So through the lab, we wanted to provide strong, tangible examples of truly inclusive models that are viable alternatives to segregated or specialized models, which we at Skills are very strongly against. We actually, it's concerning to us that there is a tendency in the supported housing world to create specialized housing for specialized people, where there needs to be something in place you need to have a diagnosis of something in order to gain access to it. And then we also really want to learn from lived experience and system perspectives what might be really needed for change. So I'm going to just toss it over to Rebecca. She's our leader of research and social innovation, and she's just going to talk a little bit about our lab process, because it is a very unique way of learning and understanding things.
Yeah, so we used a social innovation lab process to explore this topic. And a social innovation lab, for folks who might not be familiar, they're designed to draw on the strengths, empathy, creativity, and wisdom of a collective to make new progress on a complex challenge. So they're not designed to provide immediate, simplified solutions to a challenge, but instead they tend to focus on the systemic challenge. So we aim to generate longer term change through the social innovation process. We drew on the principles of human-centered design, meaning that the group of people that we're designing for are at the center of the whole process, so that we can generate creative and promising housing and support models. So we had core teams, 2 core teams, because we had 2 scope challenge areas, and they consisted of people of a wide range of insight, experience, and expertise. People from architects to service providers, advocates, families, people with developmental disabilities, the list goes on. And they came together for 4 workshops over the course of 18 months. And due to COVID, we had a mix of both in-person and online workshops, but teams were able to explore both in the Action Lab space, which you see pictured on the screen, as well as in the real community context. So just a quick overview of kind of how the process came to be. So we moved through the different stages, as you can see in the diagram, of human-centered design: empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and then test. So teams had a chance to go out and learn from folks about their experiences. In the beginning, they spoke to people with developmental disabilities and their families. We chatted with developers, housing providers, funders, service providers, and many more. And then lastly, we did tours of existing affordable and supportive housing models here in Edmonton. So if you're curious about some of these models that do exist, we'll share a link at the end. We've put it all on our website, so you can see some other creative housing and support models that exist here in Edmonton and Alberta. The teams then went through a series of disciplined creative processes to develop the prototypes, so the housing and support model. And they essentially had to create a description of both the physical space, so the house, as well as the support model that would come to life within it. So once these initial versions of the prototypes were developed, teams then went out and tested them with a wide range of stakeholders. So these prototypes have been shown to people with disabilities and their families, neighbors who might be living in the building, funders, advocates, many more. And we asked them what they thought, what could be improved, and what they liked and what they didn't like. And we also captured these summaries in a report. So the same link at the end, if you're curious to hear kind of what did families have to say, what did developers have to say, that's all been captured and shared publicly for anybody who's interested. So that's kind of a bit about the process.
So one of our deliverables to CMHC, in the initial application, we put in that we wanted to put together a mini documentary to show the process and show some of our learnings. So we're going to show you guys a snippet of it. This is about less than half of the documentary. Our website that Rebecca just referenced, and there is going to be a link shared at the end, has all of the information, including the full documentary. So we're going to just show you a little bit of it, about 5 minutes. We're going to hear from some stewards, some core team members and participants about the 2 scope challenge areas and the prototypes that emerged.
The scattered site team, for example, was designing for people who be labeled as having complex service needs within the PDD system. And so those are folks who often would be accessing kind of multiple services at multiple times. So they might be frequent users of the emergency room, in and out of homelessness, those kinds of things. The shared community team was looking at folks with developmental disabilities and thinking about kind of an alternative to your usual group home model, where we have 3 people living together as roommates in a home. Is there a way that we can kind of reimagine that to have it better support kind of social inclusion for people?
One of the main focuses that we had on the scattered site team was to really focus in on community engagement and how having a housing model that offers more opportunities for community engagement would help to avoid so much stigma and judgment.
How do you make this for people living with disabilities but at the same time, how do you make this for everybody else? It's hard to figure out what the shape of that is and what the design of that community is, because in a lot of ways we were designing a way of living.
The prototype that we came up with is called the Community Connections, a multi-unit, multi-family building with amenities on the main floor. We also have a community concierge that helps build community connections and relationships.
I'm on the shared communities team. Our prototype is really like co-housing, like how can we have multi-generational housing as well as like lots of shared spaces and stuff. We looked at having community kitchens or a shared meeting room so people could have events or board games or things like that. Community gardens on site. That's stuff that I hadn't even thought of, and the option that it'll allow people to make those connections more easily, right? You're sharing a garden plot or things like that. You're talking to that person. You can make those natural friendships a lot easier.
Once we had the idea for the prototype fleshed out and with the video and the graphics, we went out and did a lot of stakeholder interview, understand from people what's good about it, what do they like, what are some issues that they foresee, and what are some considerations we need to bring back to the table to redesign and what that might look like.
We were surprised to hear that and these were not-for-profit developers, that they believed that the concierge was a really clever term. I thought it was a bit cheesy to call it a concierge at first, but they said that would make it feel like it's more for the entire building instead of just being part of like the people in the building who are needing extra support. And I never thought about it that way. So sometimes it's good to build off of something that already exists.
When affordable housing is all kind of inner city based, I don't think I'd ever really thought about the fact that the majority of the people accessing that affordable housing and the services provided therein don't actually want to be in that area. Learning that helped us to not stay so focused on inner city land and inner city development. And there are other areas in the city where a housing project like that could come to fruition, where it would be deemed accessible as far as transit and shopping.
Another interview was with Levi, someone who has developmental disabilities, but also is in a wheelchair. He's gone to NAIT for architecture. So what an incredible thing to meet someone who knows exactly what we're doing and knows exactly how important it is. And just to see his desire to be involved, to be a part of it, and his ideas on community housing and even his reflection on where he lives and how he lives and the difficulties. That interview, you know, you gain empathy. It's difficult, you know. He was stuck in a hospital for months because he had no place to live, you know. It's it's difficult, you know, and that moves you to want to do more.
This is something that's been a trouble for me for the last 5 to 10 years, I would say. Like trying to find a good place so my mom and my family doesn't have to worry about me. I've been really thankful to get to know Elaine, and I'll probably be working with her more often now. I feel like there's more action in this project than I've ever seen in any other projects that I've heard about. I don't think they did as much research and communication, diversity of different groups.
When we were done, I think everyone said they would live there. Like that, and that's exactly what we want to achieve. We want to achieve something for everybody that is not just tailored to one group of people.
Right now, there's not a lot of examples of what real inclusive housing looks like. And so hopefully out of this project, it will be something that someone can say, yeah, this is what we mean when we say inclusive housing. These are the different features and elements that make it inclusive. And this is something that really works within the systems as they exist.
These labs are
Awesome. So that gives you a bit of a overview of kind of the two teams and a bit of their process and the prototypes that emerged. So, you know, where we're currently at and where we're headed, we're now in phase 2 of this work. So we're further refining the prototypes and preparing to actually have them be piloted here in Edmonton. So after a conversation with the key core team members, the group decided to actually merge the two prototypes, and they collaborated on a single prototype model that would lead to more inclusive apartment style living for people with disabilities. So we're now doing a more robust testing of this prototype, and we've created a partnership with a local developer here in Edmonton. And if funding is secured, we'll be able to pilot it here, construction commencing 2023. So in addition, you'll see this spin-off here. As we were exploring the feasibility of the prototype, an idea emerged to take one part of it and if it shows promise, scale it. So we're also looking at how we might bring that community concierge concept that you heard about in the video. How could we bring it to life in existing buildings in Edmonton? So as you'll see in our process here on the screen, oh, sorry, I can go back one. Oh, there we go. This is a bit of an overview of the process, and we're currently between prototyping and piloting. So we're finishing up some feasibility studies and really going through a bit more testing, and we're getting ready to hopefully have it come to life here in Edmonton.
So what we're looking to create with the developer is an urban mixed-use co-housing development located in a desirable central neighborhood, close to amenities and accessible by transit. We'll be drawing on an intentional community model, and there will be a clause in the rental agreement for all tenants that outlines the inclusive philosophy of the building. 10 to 20% of units will be offered below market value in order to be affordable to someone living on AISH. Community concierge, as Rebecca referenced, as well as what was in the video, will regularly initiate community building activities in the building. And then in partnership with local disability service providers, people with disabilities receive PDD funded support services in their own apartments on demand. PDD contracts will be pooled to provide 24/7 on-demand services. There will be on-site security plus shared spaces to support safety. And interested neighbors in the building are also contracted by the service provider to provide overnight support as needed.
So that's the model that we're currently getting ready to pilot here in Edmonton. But as we were going through this journey, we were working with a developmental evaluator, Mark Cabage, to kind of capture the learnings. And so we've generated 4 strategic learning briefs that kind of summarize the collective learning of the process. And we just wanted to take a few minutes today to share kind of what we're learning about what makes a house a home. So a house is not necessarily the same as a home. And the purpose of this lab was always about not just creating new physical spaces for people to live in, but creating spaces that people with and without disabilities can call home. Because we know that having a safe, stable, and comfortable place to call home is the foundation of a rich and inclusive life. So as we explored what a rich and vibrant home life looks like and feels like to people, we learned some things, and some things we already knew but were affirmed. And we should note that this work really builds on a strong foundation laid by self-advocates and families that came before us. So although everyone's home life is unique, there were some universal qualities that makes a house a home. Feeling safe inside and outside your home. So this is why the security piece and shared spaces was really important. Having autonomy and control within your own space. So opportunities for ownership and for the space to reflect who you are and your unique personality, as well as opportunities to connect with friends and neighbors, having your independence recognized and respected, and feeling a sense of ownership that you belong in your home. So we recognize that a rich home life cannot be built in isolation, but out of reciprocal relationships. And this requires others who want to share their life with you. So in the prototypes, you'll see community development principles woven in, and this was an attempt to cultivate connectedness amongst people, as this was a big part of what we heard from folks made home life good. But however, it's surprisingly tricky to lay the foundation for an inclusive home life. And this is due in large part to the different constraints that exist within both the housing and support systems people with developmental disabilities often rely on. So although our vision for what home life should include is clear, it can be challenging to bring that vision to life. And so this is why we continue to prototype. We're getting creative partnerships with developers, and we're really hoping to nudge systems and show examples of how this can be done so that it can be picked up and replicated more broadly.
Okay, so just that's pretty much the end of our presentation. We'll have time for questions in a moment. Just again, if you're interested in learning more about this project or any of the other projects for that matter that we work on at Skills, you can potentially learn about the Action Lab too. Just check out our website at www.skillsociety.ca. On our web page, there is one of the tabs is called Projects, and one of the subsections within the projects is called the Future of Home Inclusive Housing Solutions Lab. So thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Yes, I have a few. I mean, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a more some stupid one, but either way, I'm gonna, number one, so like when those people have those homes, like, are they, I mean, when it comes to like providing them like everything they want or need and stuff, like, are they able to be provided with things like computers or like via game consoles with internet or something like that? Are they able to get that stuff, get access to like the games and the electronics?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the supports that come, so speaking on behalf of like the supports that Skills provides, we certainly help a lot of individuals gain access to that type of stuff. I mean, obviously, our work is actually entirely focused on the staffing support. So what we represent is physically people coming into a home and assisting people to basically live good lives. And part of that is helping people to accomplish goals and dreams that they have. So for example, and we certainly have worked with people to gain access to that type of stuff. So thank you.
I'm so sorry. I'm just going to interrupt here. I got direction from the boss, Deb, to save any questions until we have both presentations done. So my apologies for that. Hold your questions for now. I'm sure there's lots to come. So we'll just put a pause on that. So I'm going to dive right into our next speaker. John Seigner, and he's from the Sinneave Family Foundation. John, can you do a quick wave for everybody here?
See me?
Perfect, we see you, thank you. So John Seigner is a housing ambassador for the Sinneave Family Foundation. After completing education at the University of Toronto and Ryerson University, John pursued a successful business career in Banff and Canmore. He is a longtime Rotarian who is the chairman of Tourism Banff, Banff Small Business Association, and Photo Marketing Association International. His family moved to Calgary for better access to support his autistic son, Andrew. In 2013, he began working at the Ability Hub as a part-time ambassador in the Resource Center, as well as developing a housing program to help families answer the ultimate question, which is what happens when we're gone. So welcome, John, and take it away, please.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to grab the screen here and hopefully, can everyone see that? Okay, there's not a few. Okay, great. So many of you already know what the Sinneave Family Foundation is. It's a private charitable foundation, and it basically was developed by a family that had a couple of grandchildren on the spectrum. They wanted to do something to support those with autism. And so we focus, and I won't read all this stuff, but basically we're focusing on supporting particularly adults on the spectrum. And we especially try and focus on the ones that are maybe not as well funded, or where we feel there are gaps in the kind of support that they might get from your standard kind of support agencies. So we do that in a number of areas, and part of it is by trying to help individuals develop skills around employment, independent living, and post-secondary education. And so my part of the deal is I'm the housing guy, and I've been working away at this for many years and trying to develop a program. This slide is probably pretty well known to everyone here. Some of the issues that face those on the spectrum, and really anybody with an intellectual disability, around poor employment incomes, challenges getting appropriate housing. And the one thing that probably jumps out the most at me from this slide is in the upper right-hand corner, average Canadian monthly rent, $1,769. That's just about what AISH is per month. So that sort of encapsulates one of the huge challenges that faces any kind of housing project, and that is sustainability means affordability, and that is not an easy thing to come by. So when I first started this, everyone loves to have a gold-plated shovel and turn the sod, and we all want to have a picture of ourselves with a big pair of scissors cutting a red ribbon on a new building. But to be honest with you, that's the least efficient. That's risky. It requires great financial contribution, and it's it's a long-term process. It's not easily scalable. So what I did was I went out and I looked for partners. I looked for the people that really knew what they were doing in terms of building buildings, low-income buildings, and running them. Because I'm not a landlord. I don't want to be a landlord, but I want somebody who is familiar with that. By the same token, we looked for partners that were great support providers. So, agencies and people who had been in the business of supporting those with disabilities. And so really our role is kind of collaborative in that we bring these partners together, and then we work hard also to get families involved. So our priorities are family and individual centered. We think that's pretty key. Safe, obviously, is absolutely critical to everyone, I'm sure. Affordable, and affordable on income support. So most of the projects that I've done work on AISH, right? And that's a tough hurdle. And then appropriate and sustainable support. So, we don't want to over support people, but we want to make sure that there's a safety net there. And one of the key pieces was social inclusion. So we realized that there was going to have to be some sort of mechanism where we were able to help individuals, socializing and with community engagement, peer support. And let's face it, peer support is very powerful. So that was one of the things we looked at. In deciding where we were going to focus our attention, the real big gap that occurred to me was in the 60 to 70% of individuals that didn't get PDD funding, right? So this was a bunch of people who were getting AISH. Maybe they had a part-time job, maybe they didn't, but they had no money for support. So where do you provide support? How do you pay for that support if there's no money there? And certainly the concierge model is one that we looked at from the very beginning as a potential. And with the concierge support, the way to fund that is by building the cost of the concierge into the capital structure of the program. So what do? Our role was to bring together the housing providers, the support providers, and then the individuals on the spectrum. And I went out and, we have partnerships with HomeSpace in Calgary. A lot of you're from Edmonton, so you may not know a lot of these names, but HomeSpace, Horizon Housing, Norfolk, Forward Housing. These are 4 projects that we're currently operating with, and these are all low-income housing providers. And they all have slightly different operational models, but basically the theory is the same. We've partnered with support agencies like Autism Calgary and Monarch House successfully. And the key to our program was to create a light support package, which was an affordable support package. And I called it a skinny package because what it involves is a regular check-in. And And the check-in is really dependent on the individual, how often they want to be checked in on, and what to help. But basically, a regular check-in, regular social gatherings, and we do that generally monthly. And a lot of what we've done, we've learned a lot over COVID. So a lot of the support that we're doing now is virtual. And the beauty of virtual support is we can support individuals in a variety of different locations. They don't all have to be in the same building in order to provide support. We can bring them together for social opportunities, not necessarily have to be in the same building. About, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago, we created the Aspires Housing Group, and it's a group of about 200 families and individuals. We meet on a regular basis, and basically their primary interest is to support housing for people on the spectrum or with other disabilities. And I would like to emphasize that we don't limit the support to people with ASD. I have a number of clients in a variety of our buildings that have mobility issues, a variety of different, and frankly, I don't ask, and I don't care. And then in our projects, we've used some additional support pieces in the event that the skinny support package is not enough. We have our Launch Plus Skills program, which is a kind of a one-on-one mentoring for people that need a little more intensive support. And then lastly, we started at the very beginning to do a series of evaluations as our clients moved into these buildings. And so, we kind of took their temperature when they first moved in the first 6 months to see how their quality of life changed, how things were going, whether employment opportunities changed, just what was the impact. And we also evaluated, we talked to the families as well to find out what the impact on the families were. And then we do follow-up evaluations later. So, a year later, and then maybe 2 years down the road, we'll come back in and do another evaluation and see how everybody's doing. So we can really sort of graft to see how the quality of life has changed and what kind of progress that our clients are making. So how does it actually work on the ground? Well, obviously the first thing is finding a building, finding some spaces in a building. And all of the buildings that we've done, we've taken, I think the least number I have is 4, and the most I have is 20 in any given building, but they're all integrated within the building. So, one building has 70 units. They're all around that size, and they're integrated with, some of them have 4 market rent, some of them are all low income. We've got other disabilities. So there's a mix of clients. So we brought people from websites, from our own information and navigation process, and from referrals from community agencies. I got a lot of referrals from AHS. And so we ended up finding spaces for people with accessibility issues. And then the client process, basically our housing team, usually myself, I would speak to the individuals that were interested, kind of do a gross assessment to see whether or not they would fit into any given project based on the support requirements, the location, the cost, and their individual circumstances and what they were looking for. And then we would send those clients on to the service provider. And in the case of Monarch House, they actually did a pretty extensive assessment of clients and charged for it. Autism Calgary also did assessments. And again, we're looking for financial viability to give the clients an idea of what's going to be expected from them to show their income and what assets are acceptable to have and what the lease agreements are going to look like, the terms of the lease, pet agreements. We got them all. And this was a real key piece that we learned, was to get them to sign confidential agreement information sharing, so that all of the different partners could share information about clients, so that Sinneave would be able to talk to the service provider and the landlord to find out how a given client was doing and if they needed any additional support and so on. So that was important. Otherwise, the different partners can't talk to one another. So in the event that I might have a client that is not appropriate for a given project, then what I would do is maybe try and help them to do something else. They might have PDD funding, so I would send them in another stream and try and support them that way. And then, the ones that are fit for an individual project, I'd send them on to one of our partners. And again, as you can see, we once the project is up and running, we continue to support the clients, helping them with their leases and the move-in and the support agreements, and then getting to know the other tenants. So part of the support package, in the case of the building you're looking at here, is Legacy on 5th. It's a mixed-use building. There's residential on the ground floor, commercial on the second floor, residential above that. It's on the LRT line right downtown Calgary. It's mostly low income, but there's a bit of a variety of different price points. Some smaller apartments, some 2-bedroom apartments. But it's so we've got 20 individuals in there, and AFS. I'm not sure if you're familiar with AFS up there, but it's Asperger's Autism Asperger's Friendship Society here in Calgary, and they're sort of a social, recreation organization that helps individuals on the spectrum to socialize and have mutual support. So they took over the social integration piece for us, and they do things like gaming night, movie night, communal cooking evenings. They went out on a bunch of walks. So there's a variety of things, and individuals are encouraged, but not forced, obviously, to participate in some of those social opportunities. And the other thing we're exploring and we're finding a bit of success with, this particular building has quite a few seniors in it, and we're finding a really good mutual support between the seniors and the individuals on the spectrum. There seems to be a mutual understanding, and often the kids in the spectrum are able to help the seniors and vice versa. So that's been a really nice mix. And the other thing is, our population is mostly pretty quiet. They tend to keep to themselves, and the seniors are as well. So that really helps with issues around sensory integration and sensory overload. So it's a pretty quiet population, a pretty quiet building. Let me see, what else can I tell you? I think I'll just show you my last slide. This is a photograph of some of the projects we've been involved with. This building on the left is Legacy on 5th. It's a home space building, about 71 units. We have 20 in there. The building on the lower right, Horizon View, it's a bigger building. It's about 160 units. We've got 13 people in there, and again, they're all integrated in the building. So, and then the upper one is our newest, Bishop's Manor, which is Forward Housing is our partner there, and that's about a 90-unit building. Again, integrated, a lot of seniors in that building, and Forward Housing is a seniors housing provider. So I think that's. I probably missed a few things, but I think that's probably about the size of it. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was really, really informative. Big thank you to both the Skills Society and the Sinneave Family Foundation for sharing with us this evening. There's a lot of wonderful information and resources available to dive into from these presentations.